Riley Leonard takes a knee. It's one of the biggest wins in Duke football history. Down goes Clemson. The Devils win it 28-7.
Going to have some fun tonight in Durham, Mr. Pash.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Blue Devil Blitz. I'm your host, Ranjan Jindal, joined by my co-host, Caleb Dudley. Caleb, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm good. Good to be back for another episode.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. Big week in college football across the board and big one for Duke. So this will be a great episode. Today we'll talk about the Florida State game, recap that one, and then preview SMU's coming to Wallace Wade Stadium this Saturday at 8 p.m. ACC Network's coming. It should be a fun environment over in Wallace Wade. So super excited to talk about that. But first, this podcast, as always, is brought to you by Duke Stores. Support your favorite Duke team, home to the only collection of merchandise in the world that comes to you straight from Duke University. Go to shop.duke.edu for all your Duke merch. I know there's a lot of cool stuff in the Duke stores for this week. Okay, so let's talk about Florida State a little bit. 23-16 win for the Blue Devils. Really unorthodox game across the board. We were there together, actually. That was a fun watch. But I'll just start with some overall takeaways from you. What did you think about that game from Duke?
I think I wrote in our predictions for the week that Duke's offense was bad, but Florida State's offense was not. It was a little bit worse.
Yeah.
And I think we kind of saw that in the Florida State game. They had first team all season 3 turnovers on 3 straight plays. Is that what it was? 3 turnovers on 3 plays.
On 3 straight plays. Yep.
Yep. And so they trotted out Brock Glenn. Obviously, DJU's out for the year. He had a pick and then a fumble. They pulled him out, tried out their backup. He didn't do much better, and they put Brock Glenn back in. So it was just not a very pretty game in general, unless you really like defense. But good for Duke, protecting their home field and getting the win.
Yeah, we'll talk about offense in a second, at least from the Duke end. But on defense, yes, totally agree that. It was a great performance, especially from the secondary. I thought there were really no deep balls down the field. Florida State's running game did get going a little bit early, but Duke really tightened up on Toafili there. And then especially when the quarterback change came in, it was just complete havoc in a backfield, which is a Manny Diaz defense has patented that. But I thought Glenn the backup,
Cronin Hook.
Yeah, Cronin Hook. He made some decent throws. Actually, Florida State just couldn't catch the ball a few times. There's a lot of drops. But really, a lot of tackles for loss, a lot of sacks, really made life difficult. And, we've seen a lot of pressures, but these turnovers were really key, especially the pick six there to get any momentum, because the turnover, the pick six got there, and then the fumble also led to a touchdown there in the second quarter for Duke, which was big to get any offensive momentum. But to talk about the offense a little bit, I thought, well, I'll leave my thoughts for a second, but I'll let you go first. What do you think kind of went wrong for the offense, and what does this offense need to do to kind of get back on track? Because the past few weeks, against North Carolina, you really bounced back in the second half. Georgia Tech, you saw a couple of good possessions, but against Florida State, there really was no rhythm whatsoever. What about the offense there?
Yeah, I don't really have an answer for the overall why they can't succeed on offense, but I think 2 things from this game in particular. One, I think Florida State was probably the best defense they've seen all year.
Mm-hmm.
Usually you see Duke try to come out and take deep shots early on. They really weren't even there for the chance to take
I think
them.
they took a deep shot all day. Yeah.
Usually you see that first drive, Malik will throw it deep twice, and then, but didn't even try that. Obviously, Florida State secondary is really talented. Secondly, Jordan Moore played what do you think, 20%, 25% of the snaps?
If that,
maybe. I guess still dealing with some kind of nagging injury from earlier in the season. I know he hurt his shoulder against UConn early in the season. But he wasn't out there for a lot, so that takes away your best deep threat right there. And so, they really were trying to just throw RPOs and kind of throw hitches and things, but with a good defense like that, it's hard to hit those short throws.
Yeah, I'll note with Jordan Moore, Diaz said today that they're trying to get him back up to full speed. I know he was dealing with some stuff from earlier. And actually, Jaquez Moore, as well as a running back who's been out, he's been saying he's been practicing a lot and taking some first-team reps. So Jaquez Moore had that nice touchdown against Florida State last year. Wasn't able to get that this year, but we'll see if he comes into the offense. And I actually think, speaking of Moore, the biggest key for me is getting this run game going, because, you can blame Jonathan Brewer and the offensive staff, but if you call running plays and you can't run the ball, you have a quarterback who already doesn't run. And so if the running game, and as far as like Star Thomas can't get going, you're really limited on what you can do offensively, especially when, like you said, Jordan Moore is out. And so Florida State has, Fentrell Cypress and some great secondary pieces anyway. But even so, if they're, able to stifle the run and just kind of pin their ears back and get after Malik and make him make quick, hard, decisions, it's tough for this offense. So I really think it revolves around the running game. Unfortunately for the Blue Devils, tight end Nicky Dalmolin is out for the year, who's a big blocking piece for that rushing attack. The offensive line has done a good job in pass protection, but I think the running game has been kind of a struggle for them.
Yeah. I talked to Bruno Fini yesterday at the press conference, and he said, they thought they had a rhythm in the second half after kind of starting off slow, running the ball in the first half. And I mean, Star Thomas broke up a 44-yard run in the second half and ended up with 88 yards and a touchdown. So, but I think we kind of saw that Duke didn't really have any answers on offense when they started busting out plays we hadn't seen all year. Like
that was crazy.
We had the Quayshawn Brown almost threw one, tried to throw a reverse, and it wasn't there. Henry Beelan came in on the same play as Malik Murphy, and
that was crazy.
Duke tried that.
That worked though.
Duke went under center for the first time all year.
Yeah,
and Malik tossed it out. So just some plays some wrinkles that they tried to throw in to throw Florida State off. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. But I think you kind of see they're kind of trying whatever they can just to get something to stick.
I did like how initially at the start they were trying to do those slants and short screens because I mentioned last week that's what I think they needed to get Malik into rhythm. And, they completed a few of those. I wouldn't say Malik got into rhythm at all. But, those were easy completions, especially to Quayshawn and Samir, that worked. But I think you do need Jordan Moore because you have to have a deep threat, even if you're not going to throw the ball deep every time. And Jordan Moore was even great on those slants and comeback routes that he's great at. So hopefully for Duke, he can play. It'll be interesting. Jonathan Brewer facing his former team this weekend. We'll see if he can pull off some magic there. But you're right. He was really, really in his bag against Florida State, just with deep into the bag against random plays. But yeah, the yards per play just is not great for Duke. And I think that's the biggest thing against SMU, especially a team that'll score a lot of points. So we can transition into that. Let's talk about this game coming up. I mentioned SMU is 6-1, ranked 22 in the country. From the beginning of the season to now, look a little bit different. Preston Stone is not the starting quarterback anymore. They just started Kevin Jennings, who's really been phenomenal, a dual threat quarterback that has been productive. He's been there for a couple years now, but this is first full year starting. He's put up great stats. What have you seen from this SMU offense, and why are they so dangerous?
Yeah, I think Jennings is definitely the key. He had 322 yards last week against Stanford, 281 the week before that against a good Louisville team.
Yeah.
In that Louisville game, he had 113 on the ground as well. And so I think their run game in general was very good. Brashard Smith is a great running back. He's had over 100 yards 3 times this year. So I think, like we just talked about with Duke, if you can get the run going early on, it really opens up your pass game. Mm-hmm. And Jennings is definitely talented enough to take advantage of that.
Yeah, he's great. I think I was like, I haven't watched much of SMU, so I was like, I'll just watch the SMU Stanford game. First play I turned on, it's a touchdown in the first quarter. I was like, oh, okay. It was like a screen, it was like a slant route. Guy ran for 80 yards, and that was really big, and that just showed the explosiveness of this offense. I mean, Rhett Lashley does a great job there. I think it's going to be for Duke's defense. The key for them will be containing Kevin Jennings, but also forcing him into making some maybe questionable decisions. The thing with Kevin Jennings is he's so athletic and so quick that sometimes he'll extend a play and make kind of an ill-advised throw sometimes. He's only thrown 2 picks, but sometimes if you can get him into out of the pocket and maybe in an uncomfortable situation and make him throw something he might not be able to, maybe that secondary can get a big turnover and help the offense out, because I think if you don't turn over this offense, it's really going to be hard to stop them. So that's my key for this Duke defense because, I don't know. I think it's a possibility, but those turnover against Florida State were big, so maybe they can do the same against the Mustangs.
Yeah, I just think one more thing to mention is their leading receiver, R.J. Maryland, is now out for the year. Tight end for them, 359 yards, 4 touchdowns so far this year. And we just talked about Duke without their tight ends, how that affects the offense. So I guess we'll see how it affects SMU. I'm not sure if he's more of a pass or receiving tight end or more of a blocking tight end, but I know for Duke they have guys that have to do both ways. So we'll see if that affects them on offense.
Yeah, and on the flip side of the ball, I mentioned Duke getting the running game going. SMU leads the league in rushing defense, so that might not be a great omen for the Blue Devils. But yeah, they're just stout, only allowing 87 yards per game on the ground. And SMU's defense has not been like a strength historically, really. I mean, they scored a lot of points. That's been their offensive identity. But this defense is tough. What do you think this Blue Devil offense needs to do, especially Malik Murphy, just to get going and maybe keep up in some sense?
Yeah. I think the first and foremost thing is getting Jaquez Moore and Jordan Moore. If they can play, that's a huge boost for the offense. The pass defense for SMU has been, okay. They've had a lot of interceptions. They have played also some not so good teams that have thrown a lot of interceptions.
Right. Yeah.
But we've seen Malik has been susceptible to interceptions at times this year too. So I think if Duke can first and foremost get their best players back and take care of the football, they're at least on the right track to keeping up with SMU on offense.
Yeah, I was looking at the BYU game a little bit just to see like what a team looks like that can stop, this SMU offense. And really it was about containing the run and getting in the backfield and then forcing Kevin Jennings into incompletions. He was 15 for 32 that game. You didn't really picked him off once, but getting into the backfield because this offensive line isn't, otherworldly. They're good. They're solid. But if Duke's defensive line, which I think can dominate against really, any line it's shown to be good, you can at least pressure Jennings and do that. But you're right. On the flip side of the ball, I think it all comes down to getting some semblance of a rushing attack against this tough team. If you do Jaquez Moore and Star Thomas, maybe even do some pitches or like running back screens or something like that, just to get the ball in your playmakers' hands. That's what you need. Even Quayshawn Brown, getting him involved a little bit will be important because he's quick and can get yards after the catch. Because I assume, Malik Murphy wants to get the ball out of his hands pretty quickly and maybe throw in a couple deep shots. But yeah, that's what I'm looking for this game for Duke.
Yeah, I think one more thing to mention is I think Duke's like, the fourth worst third down offense in the country, something around there. And SMU's only given up 30% of third down so far this season. But on the flip side of that is we always talk about, Jonathan Brewer's up-tempo offense wanting to play up speed, and SMU does the same exact thing. So I think for Duke, if they can kind of get into a rhythm and control the clock a little bit more than they usually do, they might have to kind of change their approach a little bit to hold off a good SMU offense. But if they can control the ball and, convert those third downs they've been struggling on, they might have a chance. Yeah,
third downs have just been brutal. You're right. Third and fourth downs especially. All right, well, let's make some picks. What do you think will happen?
I think SMU wins. What's the line, like 10 points?
Like 10, yeah.
I think that's about right. Duke's been really good at home at 15-3 over the last 3 years. I just think the offense isn't quite there. If they get Jordan Moore and Jaquez Moore back, I think they'll definitely, have a chance to stay in there. But I think SMU's
11.5 now, by the way.
11.5. Yeah, I still think it's about maybe a little bit less than that, but probably about right. 10 points maybe. I think SMU's offense is just a little too good. Best offense Duke has played all year, and I think they'll score just enough against a good Duke defense to outpace the offense.
Got a score? Or just?
Oh yeah, sure. Let's do I don't know. Let's do 28-17.
I was gonna say 20-20. Okay. Bright minds think alike, I guess. Yeah, I think that's a decent score. It's funny, all week I was like, this is probably going to be a game where, Duke convincingly loses. But these past couple of days, I'm kind of having a little bit of a change of heart, just in the sense that, I don't know, like 8 p.m. at Wallace Wade, maybe it's just force a couple of turnovers. Anything can happen. Might be a game in the fourth quarter where Duke notoriously plays well. And Duke's just found ways to win, to be honest. And that's, I think, a really underrated skill with college football teams. Like, you will not play your best the majority of the time, or every time, I guess. Duke has not played its best the majority of the time. But it's found ways to win in every game except one. For now, I'm not going to pick a win. But I do think that if this is close, that's very advantage Duke in the fourth quarter because especially with the road environment, I assume it'll be pretty packed. We'll see what happens. But I'm also going to say like 28-21 SMU for now. That might change come Friday. Stay tuned for Beats Picks on the Chronicles website. But yeah, I think if Duke can get this, that'll be big, especially with the tough road games that come up. But sitting at 6-1 right now, Duke is in a really good spot with just 5 games left. 5 games left? 7? Yeah, 5 games left on the schedule. So we shall see what happens.
I think I'm ahead, and we haven't mentioned this yet, but Duke did get votes in the AP poll this week.
Yes, 2 votes in the
And
AP poll.
so, if Duke wins, we might have a big college game day-esque on the horizon against Miami.
Miami, the Manny Diaz revenge tour.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what'll happen?
The
when
revenge
Diaz
tour
comes
is
back.
this week. We got Jonathan Brewer revenge
Yeah.
tour, Manny Diaz revenge tour next week.
It's funny because Manny Diaz plays he's already he beat Florida State. He's an alum from Florida State. And you got Jonathan Brewer here. You got Manny Diaz coached in Middle Tennessee State. Got to complete the full circle. And then obviously when they play Texas in the playoffs, Malik Murphy will play.
And NC State, where Manny was at NC State for a while.
Yeah, Manny's at NC State too.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that should be fun. Everyone, stay tuned. Look at all our coverage for that game on the website at Duke Chronicle. And if you're on campus or a student, definitely pull up 8 p.m. Okay, let's talk about the ACC and the whole country, because in this wild, wild season of college football, there's so many storylines and so much to talk about because college football is great and this season has been phenomenal. But we'll start in the ACC and do our weekly stock up, stock down. Caleb, go ahead. Uh-oh.
Yeah, stock up. I'll go with Clemson to appease Ranjan.
I didn't pay him, I promise.
They look good again this week against Virginia. Since the Georgia game, it's kind of looked like a different team. Obviously, we're talking about Georgia, I guess, in a minute, and they've looked very good. So obviously, not a terrible loss there. But I saw a tweet the other day. I was like, if you haven't come around on Cade Klubnik yet, where are you at? He's like 17 touchdowns, 2 interceptions.
Are you back? Are you coming around on Cade Klubnik?
I think I'm almost there.
He's almost there. Okay. Guys, I've tried to get him on it from the start.
Don't think he's ACC Player of the Year or anything, but definitely getting up there. So Clemson for me. Who do they have this week or off week?
They're off week, yeah.
Off week, yeah.
But the tough half of the schedule coming up for Clemson.
So we'll see. I mean, I think as of right now, it looks like Miami and them will be in the conference championship, but I guess to be determined. And then stock down, I'm going with Cal. Poor Cal, man.
Oh.
Then they've 0-4 in the ACC with 9 points total margin.
Brutal.
So I feel bad for Cal. They had it against NC State, blew it. They had it against Miami in what was an insane game. They lost that one at home with College Game Day in town.
You're up at 2 a.m.
I was up at 2 a.m. after Georgia Tech watching Cal. So I feel for Cal. They lost. They were Florida State's sole win. But they're still pretty good. I think Cal's pretty good. They're definitely like a bowl team, I think. But hopefully they'll be able to want to bounce their way soon.
Yeah, that's brutal. Actually, just
poor
4
Cal.
points, 9. You mentioned the Clemson thing, and we'll talk about this in a second. But there is a feasible situation in which Clemson, Miami, and SMU all go undefeated in conference play, and there is some tiebreaker scenario. I think Miami would make it first because they would be undefeated, as a whole. And then I'm not exactly sure. I think it's.
I don't know if that's what is that what it is for?
I think it's overall record is the next tiebreak, and then common opponents would obviously wash out, but then it's win percentage against opponent. I think it's like your opponent's win percentage, like in conference maybe. So
we'll see. Hopefully, I don't think. Well, maybe that won't happen. It
might. Or Duke can just beat SMU and
Duke
Miami.
Duke can make it.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, my stock up, stock down. My stock up is Virginia Tech, who at the beginning of the season I thought would be really good, and they kind of started off rough with losses, which look better in retrospect, but to Vanderbilt and Rutgers, 2 teams who are,
crazy,
not bad. 2 teams that are good. Vanderbilt is ranked. Rutgers has kind of been slipping a little bit. But nonetheless, Virginia Tech has bounced back with 2 quality wins on the road against Stanford and against Boston College, where the offense has really finally started to click. I mean, even the Miami game, that could have easily been a Virginia Tech win. So I think those past 3 games have really shown Brent Pye's squad, they're over there doing really good. And I think Kyron Drones is a great quarterback. If he can take care of the ball, that's going to be the big thing for Virginia Tech moving forward, because I think they can threaten some teams. I think they only have 1 conference loss. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Miami.
they
Miami on that crazy Hail Mary
play.
Yeah.
And they'll come to Wallace Wade. They'll also host Clemson, which can be a definitely upset alert game. But stock up to Virginia Tech. And then my stock down is Louisville. Sorry, I forgot for a second. I feel bad doing this, not because I think Louisville has played particularly poorly, but they've lost 3 close games against Notre Dame, SMU, and Miami in the past 4 weeks, I think, generally. And I think for Louisville, they've played well in each of them, but just have not been able to get over the hump. Tyler Show, I think, has been fantastic. But defensively, they haven't played very well, to be honest. And if they want to get back into the ACC championship like they did last year, it's uphill from here. But those tough losses have really kind of set them back, which I still think this is a good team. They have Clemson next, or they have Boston College next, but Clemson next week. And so some tests moving forward for Louisville, but stock down to them for now. Okay, yeah, so we talked about the ACC. Now we also will move bigger picture to the college football landscape as a whole. Last week has some great games. This week has some even better ones. Or I don't know about even better ones, maybe just as good ones, but still a good slate across the board. What are you looking for? What are you going to be watching this weekend besides Duke SMU, obviously?
Yeah, the biggest one that stands out to me, well, that's two. Most important one to me, I think, is LSU Texas A&M.
Mhm.
Kind of feels like an elimination game for me for the playoff. I think
Yeah.
either one of them, if they lose, they're pretty much done. Texas A&M really hasn't played great in my opinion, but they're kind of just scrapping it out. I don't know. It's kind of like Duke, honestly, and Oko obviously is there. Um, LSU has looked good too. They had that scare against South Carolina, but
Yeah.
they've looked good. Nussmeier is a great quarterback, so I think they're definitely. So that one will be fun at Kyle Field. That's a 7:30 at ABC. That'll be a good one. I think the most fun one, Texas Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt just, I mean, they're ranked now. It's a ranked game with Vanderbilt.
Ranked matchup. With,
They're hosting
is it at, okay, it's
They're
at
hosting
Vanderbilt.
Texas,
Tough environment.
and it's still 4:15 on SEC Network. So I don't
Oh.
know why they're doing them like that. But Vandy's turn. Diego Pavia said it himself. They beat Alabama. They're 5-2. I mean, hey, Texas coming off a loss. So we'll see.
Yeah. For the latter game, I'm not sure that's going to be very pretty.
Oh,
I think Texas is going to be kind of angry after that
18,
loss. And
18.5-point favorites in a ranked game.
yeah, Texas is a much better defense and team than Alabama, but we'll see. You never know. Anything can happen in Vanderbilt, I guess. But the Texas A&M LSU game is also interesting. I'm a pretty big fan of Connor Wegman. I think he struggled a bit at the start, but I think he has the potential to be a really, really good quarterback. And you saw that against Missouri. But really, Texas A&M, we talked about Mike Elko. His defensive acumen is great. Really shut down Brady Cook in that Missouri offense. Had a little bit of trouble against Mississippi State, especially with Wegman throwing a couple picks there. But if he can limit the turnovers and make solid throws, this team has the athletes and the talent to run over teams. And obviously the environment at Kyle Field is great. LSU, I also think Nussmeier's a great quarterback, but yeah, I think give Texas A&M a slight edge because of the environment. I think LSU might be a better team as a whole, but because of the road environment, that'll be tough. And then, I don't know about Texas Vanderbilt there.
Yeah, and then I guess just two more kind of going in the Group of 5 realm. Friday night, Boise State UNLV for Mountain West supremacy. Boise State obviously has who I think is pretty clear the Heisman right now, and Ashton Gentee's been spectacular. But they're on the road at UNLV. UNLV's 6-1. So that game kind of feels like maybe whoever wins that one, it might be the favorite to make the playoff. But then the other team that might be the favorite to make the playoff from there is Navy. Navy is I didn't realize this. Navy is playing Notre Dame this week at the Giants Stadium in New Jersey, which seems a little odd.
Do they normally do that?
I have no idea, but I know that Navy and Army are both undefeated, and which is like the funniest thing to me in the world.
Yeah.
First time since World War II, they're both 6-0. And so Notre Dame plays both of them back to back. I think maybe
tough schedule
next 2 weeks. Notre Dame's still fighting for their spot in the playoff. Navy's still fighting. I mean, Navy's in the hunt for the playoff. So I think that'll be a fun one. We'll see if Navy can hold up against a top team.
Yeah, those games will be interesting as well. We'll see what Riley Leonard and co can do. I also think elsewhere in the SEC, Missouri and Alabama is kind of a get-right game for both teams in the sense that Missouri's 1-2 since the Texas A&M game, but it's been a sloppy game against Auburn and a thrashing of UMass, which is
Vandy should have beat them too, man.
Yeah, that's also true.
Vandy had them.
Losses, but if this offense needs to get going and got an opportunity against a pretty poor Bama defense, but on the flip side, the Bama defense can have a chance to step up. I also think Milroe did not look very good against Tennessee, and so he needs a confidence boost. So that kind of is a another elimination game in the SEC because I don't know how many teams are going to get in and how the standings are going to work.
About 7 from SEC.
Well, but Missouri only has one loss in the SEC for how kind of up and down their season has been. And this is the toughest game on their schedule. I mean, if Missouri wins this game, they have
7-1.
And they have Oklahoma at South Carolina, which will be tough, at Mississippi State and Arkansas. They can feasibly go 11-1 and make the SEC championship. And I think they're a lock if they make the SEC.
I think looking at the standings right now, I think Georgia's going to make it. Tennessee
Yeah.
is going to make it. Texas is going to make it. So that's 3 right there,
Mm-hmm.
automatically, pretty much. I think the winner of Texas A&M LSU probably will make it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 4. I think the loser could still make it. I mean, they're both undefeated in conference play. But then you've got Missouri, which you just said. I mean, Alabama, if they beat Missouri, they have at LSU.
Yeah, I think
tough one. But if they win that one, I mean, it's Mercer, Oklahoma, and Auburn.
Yeah,
So
a lot of it's going on.
But I think, I mean, yeah. So it's definitely all the SEC games are still have a lot of stakes.
Yeah, a lot of stakes across the board. Well, this will be a fun weekend of football, regardless. And a fun season. I know the college football playoff starts, or well, not playoffs. Sorry, rankings start not next week, but I think election day, which is a crazy day.
Yeah, it is. It's right. Yeah, it is. Yep.
So if you're interested in the election, watch the playoff show. Maybe take some time to relax with the playoff show, and then get ready. But yeah, anyway, so playoff show, first rankings will come out. So I'm interested to see how the playoff committee ranks those teams, because obviously sometimes they do deviate from the AP poll, and that's the one that matters in the end. So especially with the 12th team, I think it matters how they see teams going forward. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I mean, I think it'll definitely be interesting. And I know next week, the week before the playoff rankings, is a lot of big games too. So
Yeah,
a lot can change. Duke could be ranked if depending on how
could be
this next 2 weeks go. They're definitely. I mean, that's what a top 30 team, I guess, according to the AP poll.
Yeah.
And so we'll see. Big one on Saturday.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Be sure to check out all of our coverage at DukeChronicle.com. We have football bleeding into basketball. We'll have our basketball print coming not this Friday, but next Friday, which is crazy because basketball season's already here. We're in the middle of exhibitions, so we'll have a lot of cool feature coverage for Duke basketball, but also football coverage still strong as well. Yeah, check out our coverage from the SMU game and our socials as well, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. For Caleb Dudley, I'm Ranjan Jindal. This has been the Blue Devil Blitz.